When John Wayne appears on Patricia Morgan's talk show in 1974, the audience expects another celebration of America's favorite cowboy. But Patricia isn't interested in celebrating. She wants to challenge, provoke, and tear down the legend that millions admire. She's built her career on taking down icons, and tonight, Duke is her target. As Duke takes his seat under the blazing studio lights, something feels different. Patricia holds her question cards with a sharp smile, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. What was supposed to be a friendly conversation about westerns and Hollywood could turn into something far more dangerous. The air feels charged, electric. You can see it in the way she leans forward, in the way her fingers tap against the cards, in the calculated pause before she speaks. But what Patricia doesn't know is that in just a few minutes, she would be facing a man who survived real combat, who built an empire with his bare hands, who never backed down from a fight in his entire life. What Duke would say that night would silence the entire studio. His words would cut deeper than any insult Patricia could throw. And no one, not the audience, not the cameras, not Patricia herself, would ever forget what happened next. Because sometimes, the quietest responses carry the most devastating power. The question Patricia asks will expose her own hypocrisy. Duke's answer will freeze every person in that room. And by the end of this interview, the hunter will become the hunted. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from, drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell because tomorrow we have another incredible story that will leave you speechless. The studio is packed wall to wall. Bright stage lights blaze overhead, illuminating the set at the center of the massive auditorium. The audience buzzes with excitement, holding up signs that read "Duke is America" and "We love you, John." Cameras glide across tracks, capturing every angle. Producers huddle behind monitors, adjusting sound levels and checking camera feeds. A silent countdown flashes on screens scattered throughout the set. 5, 4, 3, 2. The glow of spotlights dances against the velvet curtain backdrop, creating an almost cinematic atmosphere for what's about to unfold. The energy is alive, pulsing through every corner of the room. Then he appears. John Wayne walks across the stage with that unmistakable gait, slow, deliberate, commanding. At 57 years old, Duke still carries himself like the cowboy heroes he played for decades. He wears a perfectly tailored western cut suit in charcoal gray, a turquoise bolo tie, and polished leather boots that catch the light with each step. His weathered face tells 1,000 stories: war, loss, triumph, survival. That iconic voice, gravelly and deep, rumbles as he greets the audience with a simple wave of his large hand. The crowd erupts. Some call out his name with pure joy. Others simply stare in reverence, tears already forming in their eyes. There is something about John Wayne that fills a room, a presence that cannot be manufactured, bought, or faked. It can only be earned through decades of living authentically, of standing for something when the world tells you to sit down. On the other side of the desk sits Patricia Morgan, a 32-year-old journalist who has built a reputation on taking down icons. She is known for sharp questions, gotcha moments, and a progressive worldview that clashes with traditional American values. Dressed in a burgundy pantsuit with her blonde hair pulled back severely, Patricia leans back in her chair with calculated confidence. Her smile is professional but cold, like polished steel. Her blue eyes study Duke like a prosecutor examining a defendant. She shuffles the question cards slowly, deliberately, a silent power play meant to establish dominance. Patricia has made a career out of exposing what she calls outdated thinking. Tonight, she believes John Wayne is the perfect target. What she doesn't realize is that Duke has faced far more dangerous opponents than a talk show host with an agenda. Patricia doesn't waste time with pleasantries. She leans forward, question card in hand, and fires the first shot. "Mr. Wayne, you've made millions playing cowboys and soldiers, glorifying violence and war. Don't you think that's irresponsible? Don't you think Hollywood should be promoting peace instead of guns and fighting?" A murmur ripples through the studio. Some audience members shift uncomfortably in their seats, surprised by the aggressive tone. Others frown, realizing this isn't going to be the friendly interview they expected. A few exchange nervous glances. The cameras zoom in on Duke's face, waiting for a reaction, hoping for defensiveness, anger, anything they can use. But John Wayne doesn't flinch. He doesn't lean back defensively or cross his arms. Instead, he adjusts his position slightly, his weathered hands resting calmly on the armrests. He looks at Patricia with those steady eyes that have seen real combat, real loss, real sacrifice during World War II. A small, knowing smile forms at the corner of his mouth, the kind of smile a father gives a child who just said something foolish. "Well now," Duke begins, his voice rumbling like distant thunder, "that's an interesting question coming from someone who's never had to fight for anything." The studio goes completely silent. Patricia blinks, caught off guard by the directness. Duke continues, his tone never rising, never aggressive, but carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "I've played heroes because this country needs heroes. I've played soldiers because real soldiers asked me to honor their sacrifice. You ask about promoting peace." He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle over the room like a heavy blanket. "Ma'am, peace isn't something you promote with pretty words and good intentions. It's something you protect. And you protect it with strength, not weakness. You protect it with men willing to stand between evil and the innocent." The audience erupts in thunderous applause. Shouts of "Yes," and "That's right, Duke," and "Yin" echo through the studio. Some people rise to their feet, clapping so hard their hands turn red. A veteran in the third row salutes with tears streaming down his weathered face. Patricia's confident smile falters for just a moment, a tiny crack in the armor that Duke immediately notices. But Patricia isn't finished. She straightens in the chair, her jaw tightening as she shuffles to the next card. The smile returns, but it's tighter now, more forced, more dangerous. She came prepared for a fight, and she has bigger weapons loaded. But Patricia has been saving something, a question about Duke's personal life, his 3 failed marriages, his absent fatherhood. She believes this will finally crack the legend's armor and expose the flawed man behind the myth. The studio's energy has shifted dramatically. What began as a routine interview has transformed into something else, a generational clash, a battle of worldviews, a collision between old America and new America. The audience is no longer passive observers. They're invested, leaning forward in their seats, emotionally locked in. But Patricia isn't rattled by the applause Duke received. If anything, it fuels her determination to take the legend down, to prove that beneath the heroic image lives a deeply flawed man. Patricia takes a slow sip of water, letting the suspense build with calculated precision. She sets the glass down deliberately, the clink echoing in the suddenly quiet studio. Then she picks up a specific question card, one she's been waiting to use since the interview began. The smile fades completely now, replaced by something colder, sharper, more personal. This is the moment she's been building toward. She leans forward, elbows on the desk, and the studio lights catch the glint of determination in her eyes. This isn't about Hollywood anymore. This is about destroying a man. "Mr. Wayne," Patricia says, her voice dropping to a more serious, almost sympathetic tone that doesn't match her eyes, "you've been married 3 times. All 3 marriages ended in divorce. Your children have publicly said you were absent, that your career mattered more than your family. You missed birthdays, school plays, graduations." She pauses for effect. "How do you justify being America's hero when you couldn't even keep your own family together?" The audience gasps. Several people audibly gasp, hands flying to their mouths. A woman in the third row covers her face completely. A teenage girl looks at her mother with wide, shocked eyes. The applause and cheers from moments ago evaporate instantly, replaced by thick, suffocating silence. Even the camera operators seem to pause, unsure if they should keep rolling. This isn't journalism, this is an ambush, a public execution disguised as an interview. The question hangs in the air like smoke from a gunshot, poisonous and deliberate. For the first time in the interview, John Wayne's expression changes. His jaw tightens visibly. His hands, which had been resting calmly, now grip the armrest slightly, knuckles whitening. He looks down for a moment, and in that brief silence, something passes across his face. Not anger, not shame, but something far deeper. Pain. Regret. The kind of weight a man carries when he knows the truth of his failures, when he's looked in the mirror at 3 in the morning and faced what is lost. The cameras zoom in mercilessly, capturing every line in his weathered face, every shadow in his eyes, every silent second of his suffering. Patricia watches, waiting, almost holding her breath. This is what she wanted, to see the legend crack, to expose the flawed man beneath the heroic image. The seconds stretch like hours. The studio is so quiet you can hear the hum of the overhead lights, the nervous breathing of the audience, the distant sound of traffic outside. Then Duke lifts his eyes. When he speaks, his voice is quieter than before, but somehow it carries more weight than all his previous words combined. "You're right." Patricia blinks, genuinely surprised. The audience holds its breath collectively. "I failed my families," Duke continues, his voice roughening with emotion he doesn't try to hide. "I was gone too much. I chose work over being there for my kids when they needed me most. I missed those birthdays. I missed those plays. And I'll carry that weight with me until the day I die." He pauses, and his eyes glisten slightly in the harsh studio lights. "But let me tell you something. A man who admits his failures is stronger than a man who hides behind a mask of perfection. I never claimed to be perfect. I never said I had all the answers or that I did everything right." The studio remains frozen, every eye locked on Duke. "But you know what I did do." His voice strengthens. "I worked. Every single day. I built something that mattered. I gave people hope when they had none. I honored men who gave everything for this country when nobody else would. Were there costs? Yes. Did I lose things that mattered more than any movie or any dollar amount? Absolutely. But I didn't quit. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I stood up every morning and did the best I could with what I had. And when I failed, I admitted it. I owned it." Silence. Then, slowly, like a wave building from the back of the room, applause begins. Not the explosive kind from before, this is different. This is deeper. This is respect. People aren't cheering for Duke the legend or Duke the movie star. They're honoring Duke the man who told the truth, who showed that strength isn't perfection, it's honesty. But Patricia isn't moved by the honesty or the applause. Her expression hardens. She has one more attack prepared, this time about Duke's politics, his controversial statements, his vocal support for the Vietnam War that tore America apart. She believes this will finally turn the audience against him. The moment of vulnerability passes quickly. Patricia sees an opening and refuses to let empathy or human connection derail her agenda. She shuffles to another card with sharp, decisive movements, and when she looks up, the confrontational edge has returned to her face, sharper than before. This question isn't about personal failure or family, it's about politics, ideology, the culture war that's dividing America into two separate nations living on the same soil. "Mr. Wayne," Patricia says, her voice taking on a prosecutorial tone, "you've been very vocal about supporting the Vietnam War. You've made statements defending American military action while thousands of young men were dying in the jungles of Southeast Asia. Many people, intelligent, educated people, believe the war was a mistake, that it was immoral, that it destroyed an entire generation for nothing." She pauses, letting the accusation hang. "Looking back now, with everything we know about the lies and the body count, don't you feel ashamed of promoting that war? Don't you think you were wrong?" The studio is no longer united. The shift is visible, physical. Some audience members nod in agreement with Patricia's question, their expressions serious, righteous. Others cross their arms defensively, jaws clenched, faces reddening. The generational divide becomes painfully clear. Younger audience members seem to support the host's challenge, nodding along, while older veterans and traditional Americans bristle visibly at the accusation, some shaking their heads in disgust. Duke's eyes narrow. This time, there's no pause, no moment of reflection or vulnerability. He sits up straighter, and when he speaks, his voice carries the full weight of his conviction, the full power of his belief. "Ashamed," he repeats, the single word sharp as a blade cutting through the tension. "Let me tell you something about shame." His voice doesn't rise to a shout, but it fills every corner of that massive studio. "I'm not ashamed of supporting men who put on a uniform and did what their country asked them to do. Whether you agreed with that war or not, whether you thought it was right or wrong, those men deserved respect, not protests. They deserved to come home to gratitude and honor, not being spit on at airports by people who never sacrificed a damn thing. His voice strengthens. You sit here in your comfortable studio, with your comfortable job and your comfortable life that men in uniform died to protect, and you judge soldiers who bled in jungles halfway around the world. That's what I call shameful. Half the audience explodes in thunderous applause, shouting agreement, some standing again. The other half sits in stony, disapproving silence, arms crossed, faces hard. Patricia's face flushes, whether from anger, embarrassment, or frustration, it's impossible to tell. The interview has become a battlefield, and both sides are dug into their trenches, neither willing to give an inch. Patricia takes a visible breath, her chest rising and falling as she fights to regain her composure. Her fingers shuffle through the remaining cards with barely controlled aggression. There's one question left, the ultimate question that she believes will expose Duke's hypocrisy once and for all, the question that will prove everything he stands for is a lie. But Patricia has been saving the biggest weapon for last, a question that will force Duke to confront the ultimate contradiction. How can a man who plays heroes on screen justify the violence he's promoted in real life? Patricia leans back in her chair, arms crossed tightly across her chest, and delivers what she believes is the killing blow, the question that will finally destroy John Wayne's credibility. "Mr. Wayne," she says, her voice dripping with accusation, "you've spent your entire career glorifying violence, shootouts, fistfights, war. You've made millions teaching children that problems are solved with guns and fists instead of words and understanding. In a world that desperately needs peace and compassion, don't you think you've done more harm than good? Don't you think your legacy is one of violence?" The question lands heavy in the room. Even Duke's supporters seem to pause, considering the weight of the accusation. Some faces in the crowd show uncertainty now, doubt creeping in. The cameras capture every reaction, some nodding thoughtfully, others frowning defensively, everyone waiting to see how Duke will respond to this fundamental challenge to everything he's built. Duke doesn't answer immediately. He looks at Patricia for a long, measured moment, then lets his gaze drift slowly across the audience, taking in their faces, their doubt, their hope, their judgment. It's as if he's measuring not just the question, but the moment itself, what it represents, what's really being asked, what's truly at stake here. Finally, he speaks, and his voice is calm, measured, carrying the wisdom of 5 decades of life. "I never glorified violence. I glorified courage. There's a difference, and if you can't see that difference, then you've missed the point of every film I ever made." He leans forward slightly. "The heroes I played didn't look for fights, they stood up when fights came to them. They protected the weak. They defended what was right. They stood between evil and innocent people. That's not violence for violence's sake. That's strength with purpose. And this world needs strong men who know the difference." The audience sits in contemplative silence, processing his words. Patricia opens her mouth to respond, to challenge, to attack again. But Duke isn't finished. What comes next will change everything. Because Duke is about to ask Patricia a question that will flip the entire interview on its head, and expose who the real hypocrite in the room truly is. Duke leans forward in his chair, and for the first time in the entire interview, he asks the question. His voice is quiet, but it cuts through the studio like a knife through silk. "Let me ask you something, Patricia." The use of her first name, not Miss Morgan, but her actual name, feels suddenly intimate, personal, dangerous. You sit here every night, interviewing people, judging them, tearing them down when they don't fit your view of how the world should be. You criticize, you question, you condemn. He pauses, his eyes locked on hers. But what have you built? What have you protected? What have you stood for that cost you anything real? The studio freezes. Not a single sound. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not a breath. You could hear a pin drop on carpet. Patricia's mouth opens slightly, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words come out. Nothing. The confident, confrontational journalist who has built an entire career on having the last word is suddenly, completely, utterly speechless. Her hands grip the question card so tightly they begin to crumple. Her face flushes deep red. That's what I thought, Duke says quietly, with no cruelty, just simple truth. It's easy to judge from a comfortable chair. It's easy to criticize men who take risks, who fail, who try and fall short. But at least we tried. At least we built something. At least when we're gone, we'll leave something behind besides criticism and judgment. He stands slowly, adjusting his jacket with quiet dignity. Thanks for having me. Duke walks off the stage to thunderous, erupting applause that shakes the walls. Patricia remains frozen in her chair, question cards still clutched in her trembling hands, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything but sit in the wreckage of her own attack. The camera captures her face, stunned, silent, completely defeated. The legend has spoken. The studio is frozen. And the truth hangs in the air like smoke that will never clear. The screen fades to black. Text appears in white letters. Real strength isn't found in words. It's found in actions. Soft music plays in the background, gentle and reflective. If this story moved you, hit that like button, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe because we bring you powerful stories like this every single day. See you in the next one.